Hey, what's up guys? This is Pezlo MD, and today I'm going to run you through one of my tracks, Dubbing You, which is out on Future Culture Records, came out a couple months ago. We're just going to run through my workflow and how I came up with a couple of the ideas and how I put it all together to make a finished track. So let's dive right in. So for this track, I was really going after some kind of more of a minimal vibe. I tend to like using kind of like dubby pad sounds and stuff like that. So I started off with my microKORG in my home studio and came up with this this kind of like moody kind of pad thing. It's got a couple of things on here. I mean, we took out some of the lows, also controlled some of the highs with some resonance as well to create kind of like like a certain sound that I was looking for. A phaser was added to kind of add more movement, as well as a delay and a reverb and some compression. So I went a little crazy on this one, but I was just trying to create some movement in the track and create kind of like an ambience behind the sound. It stays pretty much like this the whole time. On the actual hardware, I was messing with the filter while I was recording like a really long clip, and that's how you hear some of those sweeps that are going on and stuff like that. Then over here I grabbed the clip and I actually pitched it down 7 semitones to create like just to kind of like switch it up a little bit throughout the track. So I'm just gonna actually play this now with the whole track just so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is obviously everything together, but the pad, plays an important role because it doesn't ever really come off. So, over here, I bring it down now, and it just kind of changes it up a little bit, changes up the vibe of the track, along with all the other elements. So, that's pretty much all that's going on with that track. Nothing too crazy. Then, on the second track, I used my mini log, which I used actually twice in this track to create like these weird stabby sounds. So what I was doing was I send MIDI out from Ableton to all the different synths in my studio, and I was sending little chord notes out to the mini log, and I put a delay on it and all these crazy things, and then I mess with the filter live to get like different hits. Then I created pretty much like a little loop out of it. There's like slight variations within the clips. Then I just laid that down. I mean, this is also like a huge part of the track. I mean, a lot of the elements in this track don't really come in and out too much. They all are like really, they're like engraved in the track really well, because that's this kind of sound that I was going for. Really, I was going for something minimal, nothing too wild, just like a steady groove. Sometimes I like to create these tracks that can like be played, like it's like you can leave these loops on for hours, and sometimes I feel like it just becomes so comfortable to hear, and that's kind of like what I was going for with this track, And so then over here, I have another mini log sound. It's kind of like another kind of chord kind of sound, dubby, little compression, reverb, nothing crazy. Over on this sound, just controlling the frequency and stuff. But I use the echo a lot from Ableton in my send effects. So that's kind of what I'm sending. I'm sending the sound out to the echo, and that's pretty cool. I do that on both of these. I like this new echo a lot, actually. It's one of my, I use it a lot. Then one of my favorite sounds and little machines is the Volca FM, actually, which I have here right next to me. This little thing is very powerful for its size, and it's pretty affordable too. You can get some really cool sounds out of it. So I got this kind of like classic FM bass sound. And basically, again, I'm sending MIDI out from Ableton, and then you know, I get a pattern going, and then I was messing with the velocity to create that little variation in the hits that you hear sometimes. It's not really like a distortion. I'm not really sure what it is. Kind of like a filter, almost kind of, you know, raising it up on the filter, but it's just the velocity here on the FM, which is pretty cool. So it creates like a, you know, it's just not the same hits all the time, and that's going on like kind of random. So there's no real, like, you know, repetition to it. It's just coming on and going. So, you know, that really drives the track. The bass line is real deep. It cuts through the mix really well. That's something that I really like about this sound. As a matter of fact, shout out to Oscillator Sync. That's who I got the sound from. He's got a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, so he's got like a bunch of downloadable sounds for the Voca FM. So I got it from him, and I tweaked it a little bit, you know, and it's a sound that I really love. After that, pretty much those are all like the melodic elements, bass, this little chord here, the stab, and then the main pad that's always on in the background, kind of just filling in the space. Of course, then we got the drums, which I pretty much grouped them all in like a drum mix. I add also the drum bus, which, you know, I've been using a lot since it came out. You know, you get a little bit of the boom in there to really make the kick drive a little bit more, you know, and really thump. I don't really use the drive and all that stuff too much. The compression is also, it's pretty decent. You know, it's just a one-click compression. You mess with the trim so it's not so loud. You know, I tend to keep the decay short on the boominess, so it's not so crazy and fighting with the kick. Fighting with the bass. So then, all my drums pretty much on this track I made on the TR8S, which I use a lot, as well as, you know, I use it in the studio, I use it live performance. It's a great tool, really. I love it. I love how you can send all the different sounds to different outputs and record them differently. In this track, I recorded things a little differently than I guess most people would, or how I even normally do it, because the thing is, sometimes I'm jamming and I'm making loops and I'm doing things in my studio, you know, outside of Ableton, and you know, sometimes when the creativity is flowing and the vibes are good, you know, I don't want to stop and like configure and like record, and you know, so I'll just hit record on Ableton and jam. And sometimes I won't separate all the sounds, or sometimes, you know, it just, things come out sometimes the way that they do. And here, for example, I have like a hi-hat and a snare. You know, there's no reason really why this came out to be like both in the same track, but like I said, it was just something that happened in the moment. I added a gate to it, some vinyl distortion to get some grittiness. I also added the saturator, which I'm going pretty heavy on the saturation actually here. I'm driving it pretty harshly, and then I put the output down, so that gives me like a really crunchy sound, which I really like because it cuts through. So I got that going on. The kick, I mean, you know, it's like probably a 909 kick, you know, modified a little bit. You know, controlling the you know, just taking out a little bit of these mids from the kick, which I tend to do. I just don't really like that. You know, the 909, I like removing that little portion right there. It cuts through the mix for me more. Then I got this here, which is like, I call this the high pass drum mix, because what I do is, this is kind of like, you know, a mix of a bunch of drum sounds, and then I high pass it. This is with a kick included. So I high pass it, and then I just layer it over, kind of like a top, if you will. And I like it because it gives the, you know, for example, the kick, I like that extra little layer that it gives the kick. It's also layering over that snare that I had over here, you know. So I layer that clap. I got other elements also going on in this thing. This is like all the jam coming out of the TR8S, and so what I do is I just chop it up into little clips. I grab parts that I like. Sometimes I do little drum fills and stuff, like, you know, just random things that I do when I'm jamming on the machines, and it's just kind of recording on Ableton, and then I go back and I grab the parts that I like, and then I clip it up and drag it into the arrangement or whatever it is, you know, that needs to be done. So I do that with the high pass mix. Then it, you know, it all goes over each other, and then I have the classic 909 open hat. Got a gate on there just to shorten it up a little bit, controlling the highs, taking out some of the lows. For some reason there was some lows in there when I recorded it. I got this thing called the shuffle hat, which is pretty much just like a shaker or whatever you want to call it. It's just like a 16th notes, you know, hi-hat thing. I add the auto pan to that to create kind of like some movement. You know, that's another thing. I pan out the drums a little bit during the, you know, before the recording. I try to pan them out. Then I pan whatever I need to here, you know, just to create some space in the mix with the drums, you know, as well as over here I got the chords panned to the left and these are a little bit panned to the right. So I try to keep that like that. The micro Korg, of course, is getting some width from the phase, you know, from the phaser, the echo. So, you know, I try to create that kind of, you know, the space and the width in the mix. I think is important. I mean, this track isn't mastered or anything. You know, this is pretty much, you know, -6 dB pretty much. I have a ghost kick as well, which I added to the compressor here that's on the bass. So every time the bass hits the, you know, I'm sorry, every time this ghost kick hits, the bass gets stuck down a little bit just to, you know, make sure they're not in their way. And as far as the arrangement goes, as you're hearing right now, we're going through like a little breakdown. I kind of strip things back a little bit, let the synths, you know, bring that mood in. And then there, you know, I lowered the pad 7 semitones in this little break here, and then in this little drop I brought it back up, so it creates this cool little, like, you know, you're used to the sound being dark and everything, you know, everything's coming out, and then when it drops, you know, you know, it like creates like this cool little vibe, you know, at least to me, you know, that's what I was going for, you know, with that sound there, you know, to create that kind of effect to the listener. But other than that, man, this is a really, you know, bass driving track meant for those late nights on the dance floor or something like that, maybe even a warm-up, who knows. You know, but that's pretty much the idea behind this, you know. All of it was made outside of Ableton, you know, recorded into audio, then plugged into the arrangements, you know, with the jam that I do. You know, I just jam it live and then edit the arrangement and see which part fits the best, you know, for what I'm going for. That's pretty much what is going on here. Not much else. So I think that's about it. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to check out the video, and I hope you like the track, and it's available for purchase with Future Culture Records. Stay dope.